Well, my editing skills are crap, but can the same thing be said about... Oh my gosh. What's this movie? Captive State. Stick around and find out. Captive State, it's a captive state. We're not going anywhere because it's captive. We're a captive state. I didn't have time to cook up anything. I was trying to think of, like, gosh, there's got to be some song that's appropriate to that, but I ended up having the opportunity to see Captive State today. It's got a limited release, and it was a sudden opportunity that I had to check out this movie, and so I haven't had near as much time during my entire workday to do all the things that I normally do. So this is a little bit more off the cuff even than my usual uncut reviews, but be that as it may, I'm Peter Franson from christiangeekcentral.com and Spirit Blade Productions. This is my extra uncut review of Captive State. The synopsis on IMDb, let me pull it up here, says, set in a Chicago neighborhood nearly a decade after an occupation by an extraterrestrial force, Captive State explores the lives on both sides of the conflict, the collaborators and dissidents. I don't know if it really explores the lives on both sides of the conflict. I think it shows events happening on both sides of the conflict, but I would have liked it, I think, significantly more if it had explored the lives on, both sides of the conflict. I would describe it as a sci-fi suspense drama. It's not like a, big action spectacular type thing at all. It feels like, what interested me about this in the previews is that it looked like it was being done on a smaller budget, but yet had a grounded vibe to it. And I always like seeing those kinds of movies that look grounded and that have smaller budgets that it looks like they're still trying to use well, because they can often make some more daring choices, some more interesting conceptual choices, or they'll maybe go with a more weighty and dramatic tone, and it'll be more character driven and stuff like that. So I'm always, up for checking out one of those types of movies, because you can find real gems now and then, like I did with, in my opinion, Prospect. Last week I reviewed that. So this ended up not being that kind of situation for me, but in part it's because of the type of story, the type of mode the storytelling is in. I tend to really like character-driven stories, and if I don't care about the characters, then typically, unless you're telling a story that is really doing some creative, unusual things, or really exploring some wild, previously unexplored concepts from science fiction, then I'm not going to be engaged. On the other hand, you can tread well-worn ground, and I'll enjoy your story if you catch me with your characters and get me to care about your characters. And this one was very story-driven. It's kind of like a cat and mouse story, between the authorities, those humans that have sided and are working now with the aliens who have taken over the world, and then the resistance, who are still trying to repel the aliens and take back the Earth for humanity. I really wanted more character motives to be explored, more personal stakes to be explored, and really some more psychological realism, which is something that I think have mentioned several times before in my reviews. I like to feel like the characters are responding in a believable way. So if something crazy is happening, if they're going for an otherwise grounded kind of movie in terms of the way it looks, and I won't get into more of that. But if I can tell they're in other ways going for a grounded kind of movie and storytelling experience, then I kind of expect the characters to react in, have post-traumatic stress levels of intensity when encountering aliens from outer space. Because, come on, can you imagine how you and I would freak out if, we had, an invasion from outer space? People would lose their minds, and I think would still be jacked up 10 years after the invasion as a result of, aliens now ruling the planet. So I really wanted to see more of that, and also just some more general psychological realism. There's a moment where a boyfriend comes back to the apartment that he and his girlfriend live in. He's just discovered something, that means they need to get out of town. He comes in, he's like, we got to get out of, we got to leave town right now. And she's like, okay, but you want to lay on the bed and get comfy first? I'm like, did you not hear him? Does he act like this every day? Why are you not taking this a little more seriously? And it wasn't until, a few lines later that it dawned on her, oh, something's wrong. He's being really intense. I'm like, I didn't buy into that relationship at all. And then also the protagonists have these bugs in their necks that the aliens implanted there so they can track them and be monitoring them and stuff like that. And they are fully aware of this. They even call them bugs. And yet they are speaking openly and freely about the plans of the resistance, not turning music on, not, writing things down or whatever. And lo and behold, of course, the government, the authorities are listening in, and I'm like, what? Can you display a little more paranoia for me to help me empathize with you a little bit? So I really had trouble with some of those script choices. I could also predict where the ending was headed, and I'm not necessarily someone that's like good at doing that a lot, but I could predict where the ending was headed and what kind of one of the main revelations, quote unquote, would be. It would have worked better for me, I think, if this were a tighter 45-minute episode of like a sci-fi anthology TV series. But spaced out as it was over close to 2 hours, it just, I don't think it worked as well for me as it could have in a 45-minute, time constraint. What else here? The cast felt fine to me, but I didn't think they had really the material that I wanted for them to be working with in order to show their emotional range and their ability to bring subtext into their performances and stuff. John Goodman was certainly the standout performer for me, and despite, or maybe because of kind of his stoicism that he brings to a number of his roles, was one of the only characters that I was interested in. As far as the stunts and visuals go, there's lots of sci-fi moments in this movie, but most of them are done in the dark, or they are cut away from really quickly, or they're doing other things to kind of obscure your view a little bit. And I like that approach. In a movie where maybe they don't have like a huge budget to work with. It can also make it feel a little more grounded. It can play to fears of the unknown if the things that they're portraying are like they're meant to be these creepy unknown creatures, which these aliens were to a great extent. And so I think it was a really good fit for a movie that likely had a smaller budget than many Hollywood sci-fi movies. They also used sound effects to sell some of these moments that maybe weren't really front and center visually, and so I really appreciate that as well. So I thought it was a really good use of probably what they had available. As far as themes, is there anything of worthwhile moral, philosophical, or spiritual significance going on in this experience that might trigger some worthwhile thought or conversation? I don't know. There was one line that a character said to another, said, there's no mistakes. Like, there's no mistakes in life, only fate. But they didn't really seem to run with that theme at all. It was just kind of a little blip and then it was gone. There was another moment where a character in the Resistance was told by another character in the Resistance to take her cross off because wearing that, he said you might as well be wearing a target, And I was like, oh, that's interesting. So I guess maybe religion is outlawed, but they didn't get into that really at all, except maybe in one scene where there was a patriotic song that was being sung. It was Glory, Glory, Hallelujah, but they changed the words to it to not be referring to God, but to kind of like the aliens, So that was interesting. So I don't know if this was intended to be like a cautionary tale about potentially losing our freedoms, to not aliens, but maybe to some other government that would come and oppressively take over America, or that, through our disunity and our conflict, because they implied that in this world had been the background of our government and our people and society, that we were in disunity and we were just, butting heads over things. And that seems to have been like something that left us vulnerable for this takeover from aliens. But again, that wasn't a point that was pushed really strongly. It was just kind of mentioned and then gone, So I don't know really what the intended theme might have been. So like maybe there's something about concern that like a government could take over America and we'd lose our freedoms, but also be forced to kind of live in a regulated secular society in which we can only worship the government or something. I don't know. Anyway, any potential moral dilemmas or other themes just weren't presented in a way that was strong enough to leave me thinking. So I really don't have that much to say about the themes in this movie. If I were a time traveler, since I have no idea what your tastes in movies are, I would go back in time and say, Peter, this one you could watch, maybe put it on in the background while you're playing a video game if it is on a free streaming service or a service that you already pay for at some point in the future. It's not one that you're going to want to give your full attention to in any given evening, and certainly not one that you're going to be interested in giving money in order to see. So, it's rated, what is this rated? It's rated PG-13 for sci-fi violence and action, some sexual content, brief language, and drug material. Those are my thoughts. I would love to get yours in the comments below. As a reminder, this month, if you're a patron of any tier at patreon.com/Spiritblade Productions. Sorry if this has been, if I've been running off my mouth faster than usual. It's been a crunch today that I wasn't expecting to have. Anyway, I'm making our genre-bending sci-fi fantasy audio drama Spirit Blade free forever, and that's coming first to patrons, which includes an all-new video version with text commentary that takes you behind the scenes about the making of it. And anyway, for more info, you can go to patreon.com/Spiritblade Productions. And after that, of course, I'd love it if you came by christiangeekcentral.com and join us as we, oh my gosh, as we continue to geek out and seek the truth.